it's a big, broad, wide sector and very fragmented. But that's okay as long as we are all mindful of the fact that we all need to look out for each other. We need others to be successful as well in order for that to be sustained. And it's not a healthy sector unless we're all winning. Let's do our best to help that.
We should be looking at the industry slightly differently. It's not just bricks and blocks. There's a whole host of things that goes into that. And I think that's the thing that we need to remember with all these things. It needs to cover a whole host of things and work for everybody.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Adobe Acrobat.
Pete, obviously we've got some hard and fast rules on this podcast of 3 headlines, 2 opinions, 1 takeaway. I think it might be more like 5 or 6 today. I think there's quite a few different stories with different offshoots and arms and legs to them. Is that allowed? Are we okay with that?
I mean, we were inundated with positivity for this week's podcast, weren't we? It'd be rude not to, breaking the rules. I'm not sure. I'll have to look in our legal documentation to be honest. So I'll have to get back to you on that one. But I tell you what, let's just play it out, and then if there's any T's and C's that we are in breach of, I'll let you know. Oh, sorry, my solicitors will be in touch.
all the listeners will be deluged with complaints for breaking our own rules. How's your week been?
Yeah, not too bad. Summer fair yesterday at a local hospice, so we came back with about 18 teddies and a full bag of sweets. Like we need more teddies. but work-wise, yeah, pretty good. There's a lot of positivity in a whole host of negativity. I very much feel, and if you search for the negative, you'll find it. You search for the positive, you'll find it, as we're going to show on this episode. What about you?
Yeah, I'm much the same. I will say, as a slight sad point, I saw the news about Zentia but yesterday as we're recording this, but it'll be Monday by the time people hear this, which is really sad. Another lot of redundancies there in a brand which has been pretty integral to the sort of construction products part of the supply chain. It kind of feels how it's going on at the minute. Pipeline seems really, really good, and then it's just not making its way through to delivery just yet. I feel like we've been... we'll talk about it again today, and we've been banging that drum for a little while now, haven't we? So how long that can last for, I don't know, but I can't complain. We're nice and busy.
Good.
Yeah, weekend was quiet, so a couple of kids' parties as there always is. But yeah, beyond that, not much to report, mate. Just excited to hack away at these 5 or 6 stories that we've got this week and see if we can get them down to 3.
Yes, let's start with number 1, shall we? And let's dive into it. And this is Specification Online, which seems to be delivering a lot of goods for us at this moment. And this is talking about they've gone for the positive headline again in amongst a lot of negatives here. So they've gone for, is UK commercial construction experiencing a comeback? Yeah,
seems to be. Yeah. Well, there we go. That's how we move on from too many headlines. Yeah, they have again, and good on them for doing so. They definitely picked the positive out of what is quite a bleak update. I think we mentioned fleetingly last week the S&P UK Purchase Managers Index, which had the sharpest drop in 6 months. We're at the lowest level since COVID. It's you wouldn't think they'd be far to fall. We've had 17 months of contraction in terms of market confidence, and it's still somehow getting worse. I think we're down to the 30s now, aren't we? Is it 30, 38? So again, we've mentioned it several times on this podcast before, but the way that the index works, for anyone that isn't aware, anything 50 and above indicates positive sentiment and therefore is likely a leading indicator of growth. Anything below that indicates lack of confidence and therefore potential market contraction. And yeah, like I said, we're in the 30s now, which isn't phenomenal. And then to compound that, Glenigan is actually looking at construction pipeline as its business is. So we've got some real live market data as to what is appearing in pipeline relative to that sentiment, which I think gives us an indicator of whether or not people are being negative or positive, and some real world weighting, if you like, that would substantiate whether or not there is that positivity or negativity. And as you rightly say, Pete, within the headline, the overall figures are not phenomenal, to put it mildly. But it seems like a lot of that is the residential market dragging down the whole of construction. And actually, per your point, where you isolate commercial construction, there's actually some green shoots starting to appear there, which is which is really interesting actually.
Yeah.
So it's not sector wide recovery. I think we keep talking about pipeline, and maybe it's more pipelines that there's kind of a discretionary element needs to be applied here. Offices, hotels, leisure, etc. A lot of the non-resi sectors are doing relatively well, but yeah, it's not really being felt in market an awful lot yet, is it?
Mm. No, it isn't. And to continue on that, on your point there, you always got to mention that London up 7% quarter on
Mhm.
quarter, but 44% year on year, and that is driven by the biggest shift or in non-residential, showing that resilience in offices, up
Mm.
111% in the period, 57 year on year. So there are some major projects in London that are propping that up, if you like, but they are still projects. It is
Mhm.
still a positive direction, along with, like you mentioned, retail and hotel and leisure, but education and health as well. So in that non-residential, there's a whole host to go at, and as we'll find throughout this episode, I think if there's anything that we can say, okay, how do we change this shift and how do we get moving again? A slight segue here, and that would be looking at skills, getting more people into the right positions, so that when we are good to go and it is looking upwards, we can fire on all cylinders and get things moving quite rapidly.
Yeah, for certain. I think I've mentioned anecdotally previously, speaking to friends that are involved in framework and tendering and so on, that education was busy for them at the minute. So again, that doesn't mean boots on the ground and live sites, but that
Mm.
a lot of things happening at a sort of bid level. And that looks like it's starting to make its way through as well. I saw that education was 40% growth over the quarter that Glenigan had been looking at. So again, that's looking healthy. It feels like a lot of the non-resi stuff. The demand is there.
Mhm.
Civil's dragging its feet a little bit. I think there's a 33%
Yeah.
decline. That surprised me slightly, just given how much we've spoken about sort of the value of the infrastructure
Mm.
pipeline and so on. So that surprised me a little bit that that's dragging its feet. And again, this is where I will weave in one of the other stories that we were looking at. But all of this set against resi market slowing down, but the building safety regulator talking about gateway 2 approvals continuing to move through at pace. Um, so yeah, to your point of building out that capacity to be able to deliver, we probably still, as we'll come on to in our next story, we probably still need to, despite the fact that there is that sort of weighing down of the market at the minute. Obviously, we're all waiting for things to hopefully calm down in the Middle East, but yeah, we still need to make sure that demand is there and that we're ready to go at that
Mm.
point. Because yeah, it's tomorrow's problem, isn't it? But we still need to be ready for it.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a topsy-turvy headline, really. Positives and negatives to take from it, and we've spoken a lot about the positives. There's a lot of facts and figures and numbers in there, and as we've done in previous episodes, we've looked at reports and detailed documentation on various different parts of the industry. What I want to mention just now is our partners, Adobe Acrobat. One thing that they do really well within their PDF Spaces part of Adobe Acrobat is you can upload a document which has got loads of numbers and figures and stats. If you ask it, it will pull off the main headline stats information for you using its AI assistant. But what it does, it actually creates an audio podcast. Don't go and listen to it. Listen to this for those particular things. But if you've got a load of numbers and figures in a report or a detailed lengthy report, you put it in PDF Spaces and it will create a podcast. It is truly amazing and it is really accurate.
But I was going to say exactly the same thing. So I did it with the General Products Regulation white paper, which is it's a beast of a document. I'm finding at the minute that I'm busy during the day, family during the evening, and I'm doing a lot of my learning while I'm driving. It's either on the commute or going visiting clients. Absolutely perfect for that. I still think you need real presenters for proper podcasts, but as a means of digesting something that is very heavyweight and has a lot of data in there, it was really really useful. I'd highly recommend it for anyone that's pressed on time and needs to stay across these things with a high level of detail.
Moving on, high level of detail. Let's have a look at getting people into the industry in detail, shall we? And this is our second story. Ryan, take it away.
Well, this I'll try and do this without getting on my high horse, because this is a topic that you will be aware that I'm very passionate about. I think other people listening to this will know that I'm pretty passionate about. But careers and construction as a sort of destination sector, if you like, for talent. I know we've spoken at length in recent weeks about some of the soft indicators that we've got around how popular construction courses have been at a further education level, even oversubscribed in many cases. The level of investment going into creating more college courses. Several headlines around how popular particular apprenticeships have been, and the sheer volume of applicants for those roles. That is all brilliant, but at the same time, we're also seeing, probably back to the first article actually, Pete, of kind of discrete supply chains within the wider construction ecosystem, that for all there is that kind of groundswell of interest at that level, there are other parts of the sector that are absolutely crying out for talent. And one of the more harrowing statistics that I saw this week was that by 2035, we're going to need over 1 million new entrants into market. So we keep talking about this 250,000 figure. Actually, when you account for the number of people that are set to retire or that are likely to move out of sector, 1 million people needed for us to hit our targets it's gargantuan. And so, yes, it's great that we're getting more interest from an apprentice point of view. Yes, it's great that we're getting more interest at a college point of view. But what about the other parts of the supply chain that are less visible, that people just aren't aware of, that people potentially are aware of but are less interested in? And so I've been an advocate for a while about the way to do that is just to make the sector and what it does as interesting and as visible as possible, and then let people choose their own adventure and choose their own way in. We do some amazing things. I think to credit Mark Southgate, the built environment is often the best advert for the built environment. My kids love building things, and they take them to a city. We live in the suburbs. Take them into a city centre and let them look at the skyscrapers, and it's magical. Seeing the world through their eyes and seeing the built environment through their eyes. And I still, for all of the stats that you can hold up about specific apprenticeships and specific courses, we're clearly still not doing a good enough job at driving that demand across the entire sector, and then creating those opportunities for people coming into sector, as we've discussed at length previously. So to bring us back to the headline, it's not just me advocating for this whole sector approach and sort of getting out to the general public. The CIOB are calling for a national construction careers campaign, which is something that we've been talking about for a long time. You'll have seen, I'm sure, as everyone else will, the government's initial report on NEETs and the number of young people that are out of education, employment and training at the minute. And they're talking about it becoming a pandemic almost. The number of factors exacerbating it. We're not even at, I don't think, the sharp end of AI having affected these figures either. It's more lifestyle and economic factors. But yeah, we've got this weird paradox of a generation that are facing high levels of worklessness, a sector that needs more and more entrance to it, and yet we're not able to properly bridge that gap. So that's what the CIOB are calling for. Basically, is that we need to be more front and center and more in people's minds when they are selecting careers or considering opportunities and so on. And they cited some research which is very similar to I mentioned before. We've done work with YouGov on general public and their sort of perceptions on sector. And 66% of young people have a positive view of construction, but only 30% would consider working in the sector. And that's again, it's hand in glove with what we found previously. So yeah, at the risk of sounding negative, because I know that's not our remit, but yeah, for all of the genuinely positive news about interest from young people into sector, you're still talking 3 in 10. If we can make that 4 or 5, then all of a sudden you have a much bigger talent pool. And I truly believe that there are so many roles within sector, particularly things that are more office based, more technical, etc. The things that don't have high vis and hard hats, and literally less visible. I don't think we're going to win the war for that kind of talent until we make people aware that those kind of opportunities exist. Rant over. I'll ask you what you think of the story now. But yeah, it's a topic I could go on at length, to such an extent that you could feed this recording into Adobe Acrobat Spaces and get a brief summary of my rant. Anyway, over to you, Pete. What do you make?
We might try that later on. See what it comes out with. Yeah. So this comes following the publication of the interim findings for the government's Young People and Work Review, and that's the official review is going to be published, or it's expected to be published in September, which we'll cover in due course. It cited 1 million 16 to 24-year-olds are currently classed as NEET, like you say, so they're not doing an awful lot and are ready to help an industry that needs that help. And essentially, CIOB is saying exactly what you said. We need something that's bigger than niches and individual areas and bespoke campaigns or plans. This is about the wider brand building and awareness of the industry and the diversity within it in terms of job roles and what that requires. And it's just a huge head scratcher to me why this isn't front and foremost in everybody's mind, considering the amount that the government, as we've been reporting, the amount the government seem to be focusing on the industry. They seem to be injecting really good money into the industry on training and all that sort of stuff. That there isn't this huge public service announcement in focusing on highlighting. I think the word construction is very deceiving, and that might be the problem. And the downside to it is everyone searches for construction. You can go onto like Google Trends and stuff and look at the difference. Everyone searches for construction. They don't focus or search for built environment, and that's the problem. But if we were to turn it around and say the built environment, I just think it sounds. It doesn't make you think of building work. It makes you think of cities and the broader scope of which it is.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So I've heard that debate play out several times, and I don't have a particularly strong opinion on it. I think you kind of, to your point, you meet the market where they are, and if the shorthand is construction, then yeah, I'm for that. I think it's more the sector's image, and I mean that in a literal, visibility sense. What are the icons? I've mentioned this before in some of the deconstruction reports that we've done. That I think we benefit. You take healthcare, for instance. If I ask you to think of a healthcare professional, you might have an idea straight away of a frontline healthcare worker because that's who you engage with and that's what you see. But I think we all have because we know people that work in the NHS because it's one big organisation and so on. I appreciate there's private healthcare as well, but certainly in this country, it's slightly easier to get your head around the fact that there is this ecosystem of people in different roles and different professionals and so on. I think we have a similar story to tell. This is what I keep coming back to, that there is an emotive sort of cradle to grave story with construction or the built environment. And I think because we don't have that one NHS, one identity, one sort of brand to coalesce around, we're really fragmented. Think of all the different trade bodies and professional bodies and different interest groups that all represent these different niches. There needs to be something that galvanizes these people. I know the Labour MP for Northamptonshire, Mike Reeder, he put a bit of a call out to the industry to consult on it, and I responded to that. And he was asking the same question as the CIOB. Does it need an overarching kind of campaigner? And I think if for no other reason than, and I'm not blaming it again, CITB gets a lot of the blame for this, and I don't think it's fair, if I'm totally honest. I'm not sure it's what they're necessarily there to do or what people want the levy to be spent on. But yeah, I just think there needs to be something that galvanizes and pulls together these disparate groups for the good of the sector as a whole. I think we are one big ecosystem, and even if your part of the supply chain is doing reasonably well for talent, you're still going to be subject to the same holdups that we are now if the next group along is struggling for talent and so on. We've spoken before about RICS on the surveying side of things. They've put out a warning a couple of years back on just how chronic, particularly with chartered surveyors aging out of the sector and retiring and so on, that you've got a chronic shortage there. And if we can't get things surveyed properly, if we can't get work done there, doesn't matter how many people you've got ready to go from a delivery point of view and a contracting point of view, the work cannot make its way to that point. Same with local authorities and then people on the planning side of things, as we've touched on previously. So yeah, we've got to appreciate that it's not just my problem, my part of the world, and the thing that I'm focused on. That we are all part of a broader system that needs to all work together. So yeah, I do think it needs, whether it's the CIOB, whether it's government, whether it's another. Funny enough, it's what we were trying to do with deconstruction initially. It just needs something that is sort of agnostic from any one part of the sector, that is focused on attraction as a whole, I believe.
Yeah.
I keep saying rant over and then ranting. So yeah, do pull me up on that.
No, anybody listening, give us a call. We're happy to help. Is the overarching call to action on that one on that one? Eh? Yeah, I think Ryan's got enough stats and facts and figures on those types of things that we can help the industry quite a bit on that. So give him a buzz.
But no, I do think it's important. And like I said, I don't think it's fair to pin it on any one trade body, etc. It's too much. And like as I say, even if your side of the street is clean, we need everyone pulling in the same direction on this. So who that body is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there does need to be something. So yeah.
So moving on to our final story, there's a bit of a segue here because there's something slap bang in the middle that connects the two, particularly from what we've just been talking about then, maybe not an overarching campaign, but getting more people to understand that the built environment, construction and building is more than just what you see. And what a great way of doing that is to celebrate Gaudi's 100th birthday. Hey?
Yeah, well, because we spoke about the Sagrada Familia before, haven't we? And the fact that this is the year that the thing is finished. I'm sure there'll be sort of final finishing works and so on. But yeah, anything that I mentioned before, my kids love these magnetic tiles and sort of making buildings out of that, Lego and Duplo and so on. These kind of innate tactile creative skills that are ostensibly that they are construction, but they don't go into it thinking this is construction and this is going to lead to a career and this is they just have fun. And that's what Lego's all about, isn't it? So Lego have got that. I believe it's the biggest set they've ever done. 12,000 piece replica of the Sagrada Familia to celebrate, as you say, Gaudi's 100th anniversary and the opening of the thing this year. And it's incredible. I will tell you now, I would not have the patience for it. The number of Lego models that have been bought over the years that get halfway through and then get back in box. Yeah, don't have the time, don't have the patience, but I do think it's a very cool thing. And again, if it provides some soft skills and an intro for young people or not so young people into what it's like to design and construct and be creative and to see something emerge that is the built environment, then yeah, I love it. I think it's a really, really cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's right up my street, and me and my son. It's the one thing if you want him to sit down, it's give him a Lego kit because he's well into it at the moment. But there's two things on this for me. It's you show people some of the images of it. It is so hyper detailed. It is. I would class it. It's not a Lego build. It for me, it's a work of art. What they've done for two reasons. One, it looks stunning. You can break it into parts, and you can see the internal part where you've got. It's still Lego, but like stained glass window visuals. The other side of that is that is it a Lego build? It's part of their architecture portfolio because they don't get into religion. It's one thing they just don't do.
Yeah.
And you look at the bricks, and on the face of it, there's not many that you can see that you would class as a traditional Lego brick, so yeah, I think it's more of a piece of art than it is a Lego build, to be honest, but I think it's visually very stunning.
It's an incredible thing. I can't think of a place in my house where it would be safe upon completion. I think it would be, I can't I can't imagine building something at 12,000 piece and then having a 2-year-old destroy it. So yeah, I think that will not be trouble in the Jones household anytime soon, but it's phenomenal. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, which leads us nicely on to trying to get people into the construction industry. Very similar to our previous story. We're back with Spec Online, and this is the CITB launching Accelerated Apprenticeships, the AA, to boost home building and tackle regional skill shortages. Now, the thing that I really like about this is that it's specifically apprenticeships focusing around house building, not just that, in the localized areas that need these skills for specific house building. So the bricklayers, if you like, fast tracking it as well. So instead of it taking 2 to 3 years, it's to 12 to 18 months, I think it is. And there's 15 programs planned for mid 2029. Bit late for me, to be honest. I prefer 2027 rather than 2029. but they're looking to deliver over 1,500 apprentices into the industry and into house building, and it's a dent in the million that we need, or 1 point however many it was. A small dent, but these keep cropping up in certain areas, and at some point we'll add them up, and it'll be a fair chunk. I feel. What's your thought on what the CITB are doing here?
I like that there's a consistency here. I know we spoke about CITB last week and their kind of transparency around their plans for the upcoming year. They'd mentioned within there this regional approach, and we touched on it previously with the government's plans for FE colleges, hadn't we, around the industrial strategy and taking a geographical look at what skills are required in which region and so on. So again, that was sensible. This feels like a sensible continuation of that. There's reference in there to a wider strategy around the CITB working with the devolved mayors across the country to understand what their delivery plans are. I think I mentioned previously Andy Burnham's sort of 10-year plan, and some of the regional growth companies set up within the Greater Manchester area, and other devolved mayors doing similar things. So with it, that brings then plans down at a micro level, which should give a decent indicator of what that pathway looks like. Again, it's no good us chasing arbitrary targets on new entrants into sector and new apprentices into sector without understanding where the roles are likely to be, and therefore what skills are most likely to help the sector to deliver, but also help these young people to have viable careers afterwards. I mean, that's something we maybe are guilty of not thinking about too much because we focus on the figures a lot. But it feels very sensible. It's not, like I say, it's not just an overarching arbitrary target. It's what do these areas need? Not least that a lot of these will also be the parts of the country where things like the new town developments will also be. So again, it's not just house building targets. It's gargantuan developments that will absolutely need support. So I'm with you. I looked at the 2029 thing and thought, I'd like it sooner. There's a balance to be struck, isn't there, between you want these apprentices to receive proper training, to be confident and competent when they are on site, but also we do need to get our skates on a little bit. But is that timeline maybe a pragmatic indicator of when we think the market's going to pick up and demand and everything else will be there enough to satisfy these things? Does that? I don't think we can get 1.5 million homes built in a year. But is that realistic and sensible? And will the demand likely be there, and therefore the roles likely be there at that point, perhaps?
Yeah, it could be. One thing that they do cite is that this isn't just training and away you go. It's full cycle. So after the training, it's about supporting, finding roles, and getting people in positions where they are actually in work, rather than just providing the apprenticeship. And then if there isn't a job at the end of it, well, you're fully trained. So that's the thing that I really like about this. It seems to be they're not just doing half a job, if you like.
Yeah.
They want to see this through, and it's another part of what they are delivering at the moment, and rightly so. That's what they're there to do, and it seems like they are making changes, making updates, and putting things in the market which they should be doing. And hopefully there's more to come from the CITB in this help and support in the areas that need it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I appreciate, it's one press release that's then been picked up by media, and I probably need to do my my homework on the wider initiative. But one of the things that I was interested in, it's more a question than anything that I've got any real insight into, is what's industry's involvement in this? There's a lot of mention in there about creating sort of viable full-time roles. I can see working with the sort of the devolved mayors that perhaps during the life of the apprenticeship, they are a pool of talent, and therefore anything that's been greenlit by the mayor's office or by devolved government, they go on to work with whichever contractor has been appointed on those projects. But I'd be interested to see, do house builders get involved in this? Is there a central employment model where there's guaranteed roles for these young people upon completion of these apprenticeships? What do we do with them? Again, it's admirable. It's more people into sector. It's more trained, sort of skilled people into sector. But who ultimately pays their salaries at the end of this? You can see this being funded by CITB, by government, etc. during that training process. But and I appreciate it's not an easy answer. But then what? You know, what happens next? We're going to have this pool of people ready to go on site, but yeah, what's the ambition there? I know there's lots of young people that we've spoken about this before. This sort of central employer model or not. Some young people that would jump at the chance and would be motivated to run their own business and everything else, but others that wouldn't. Again, maybe it's one of the things that turns people off the sector is that I could earn more doing this, but I would prefer to be a PAYE sort of employed member of staff, and therefore I'll look at other sectors where that model is more prevalent, perhaps. So yeah, so it's great in theory. I think the idea is absolutely right. I think taking the devolved view, focusing on what skills are required, I think makes people more useful to their local job market. But yeah, that's the final missing piece for me is what the intention then is beyond there in terms of viability of role and so on. But yeah, it's a nice idea.
Yeah, idea in principle, like perfect. That's the way it should be. But in practice, there's a few more things to solidify and make sure that it does work that way. But having said that, I don't think anybody can be 100% confident that they're going to have those jobs at the end of something, regardless, just because that isn't the way the world works, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but let's not end on a negative, eh?
Should we do takeaways?
Yes, let's do it. Do you want to go?
So yeah, I'll go. So I think I touched on mine a little bit earlier, but I think we could all do with reminding ourselves that it's a big, broad, wide sector and very fragmented, but that's okay as long as we are all mindful of the fact that we all need to look out for each other. But yeah, as I said before, even if our part of the world is doing okay, we need others to be successful as well in order for that to be sustained. And yeah, it does feel like there's a lot in pipeline that hasn't yet made its way through, and the people that the work isn't making its way to are not having a fun time with it at the minute. So yeah, I think we have to be mindful of everyone else within the sector, and it's not a healthy sector unless we're all winning. So yeah, let's do our best to help that.
Yeah, mine carries on from that, and that's about thinking a little differently. So we mentioned Lego there as a bit of a segue to the larger campaign and apprenticeships, both trying to pull people into the industry. But we're looking at we should be looking at the industry slightly differently. It's not bricks and blocks or just bricks and blocks. There's a whole host of things that goes into that, and I think that's the thing that we need to remember with all these things, that even if we do have this overarching campaign piece, that it needs to cover a whole host of things and work for everybody. And so from that perspective, we need to think a little bit differently about how that looks and how that comes to light, and that's an exciting thing to be part of, really.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Ended on a positive then.
We did. We managed it. We'll see if we can do that in episode 120.
Of course we can. See you next week.